All right, how you guys doing? This is my M3.4 precedent analysis, and I did this one on the McAllen building condominiums. And we will see here project stats. So it's located in Boston, South Boston, built in 2007 by Office DA is the studio. Dan Gallagher was the head architect, and then Landwork Studio was the landscape architecture, headed up by Michael Bleer, and the structure was by Simpson, Gumpert, and Hedger. So we got a lot size of 1.49 acre. Again, small site, relatively, but packing a lot of density onto it. We've got a 24,500 square foot building footprint with 350,000 square foot total of living space, and that's across 14 stories. 144 residential units, and there's a little bit of a mix there. We've got smaller units at 650 square feet all the way up to 5,500 square feet. Estimated cost excluding the land purchase was around 70 million, and it came out to around $300 per square foot in terms of construction costs. So here it is. You can see there in red, that is the McAllen building condominiums. Just to the north, there's another little complex. But we'll see here. One of the reasons that I chose this precedent, it's got very similar site conditions to our site that we chose on the LA River, in terms of the fact that it's got downtown Boston off to the west, and then more residential off to the right there in the green. So those yellow, it's going to be more kind of noisy, busy stuff, obviously the main streets there. And then blue is more industrial, so similar to our site as well. We've got bridges flanking the site on either side, and then surrounded by kind of industrial and then residential with quick access into the city. And I'll get into some of that stuff in a second. So the narrative, McAllen building condominiums in South Boston stand as a pioneering model in urban residential design, really focusing on sustainability, luxury, and urban revitalization. It was the first gold LEED certified condo in Boston, and really wanted to mix urban luxury with sustainability factors here. So you can take a read through that, but I'm running out of time here, so I'm going to skip ahead. So here is the ground floor layout, and I really wanted to highlight the parking structure here. So you can see in blue is the column grid layout. It's very logical, very structured. Yellow is the path of travel that cars kind of take up through the parking lot. You can see they come in on the left there, up the ramp, and then around, and it circles up. Parking is on the first 2 floors. So there's a similar layout on the second floor. So here is the first residential level. You can see on the north side there, a lot of community space. That's where the pool is housed, and really great landscaping, as well as some cool paths. I highlighted in yellow there, kind of the paths of travel around. Really great because there's not that many dead ends. You can see there's kind of a loop that happens that can be accessed from either side, and you can see on the left end of inside the residential area there, you can see vertical circulation core as well as on the right. So kind of boxing in on either end, both going up vertically. And then here I kind of touched on before, but this is one of the most interesting parts about this building, in my opinion, which I didn't really know about before, but it uses a staggered structure truss system for the residential units, and I'll get to in a second. You'll see which are on top of the podium. But the diagram I drew up there on the top right kind of demonstrates this staggered structure. You can also see highlighted in blue in the section. But basically what it is every other floor will have steel trusses in vertical, so that opens up space for the residential units without columns in them. while still being able to transfer those loads down to the structure below. Quite efficient, and I thought it was pretty cool. You can see down below the parking structure is actually the podium, and those are going to have a little bit different structures, obviously. So the vertical supporting elements in the parking garage are rectangular concrete columns with widths ranging from a foot all the way up to 3 feet, and typically spaced 36 feet apart in the east and west direction. But then when you get to the residential floors, it's a combination of W14 steel shapes and rectangular HHS steel shapes. And obviously, structure is going to be a little bit different, but that's okay because of the podium. The floor systems, parking has 1 foot thick reinforced concrete slabs at the bottom section, and then the residential floor is a little bit more complicated, but it's basically a lightweight concrete slab, reinforced with rebar, obviously, and then that slab is cast on a 2-inch 18 gauge galvanized steel deck. Yeah. And so, yeah, now talking about the podium, another great kind of precedent to take away from this project, in my opinion. But some of the main benefits are obviously the density and cost of construction. So it's going to allow for a lot more stories above, while also still keeping costs down and only using that expensive concrete at the base where you need it. It's great for mixed use flexibility. The first level is going to generally house, retail, commercial, as well as a lot of that parking. So it almost kind of creates a separation of the two typologies. Safety, it's great in terms of fire and all of that and code. Also, the podium is going to reduce noise. So in terms of the site condition, being kind of in this congested area, having high traffic streets and bridges on either end of the lot, kind of like ours, good for reducing noise. And then also incorporating the parking definitely frees up space on the site for landscaping or just anything that needed to happen. So sustainability, definitely a big focus in this project. LEED Gold certification. A lot of that came from the green roof, which due to the form of the building kind of acts as a fifth facade along that diagonal as the building slants down to kind of meet the more residential side on the east. And then it's also going to be able to capture a lot of rainwater, decrease urban heat island, all great things. You can see there also in the top right, the 5th floor terrace, which is another community little space there. Building used a lot of eco-friendly materials, recycled, insulation, bamboo. These are all highly bamboo, very fast growing and renewable. So yeah, they were able to save over 600,000 gallons of water and reduce energy consumption by 30% with their strategies. So the building envelope also responds to the conditions around the site, which I thought was very interesting and hadn't really given much thought to before. But there's kind of 4 to 5 real main envelopes that they use, and you can see at the towering end, which faces the west and also has views of downtown Boston. Obviously wanted to capitalize on that, so a lot of glass curtain wall was used along that whole face. But then as the building slopes down and kind of meets the more residential in the east, you're going to be able to get a lot more kind of human scale, and that's where you see the brick kind of reflecting that residential neighborhood. And then the sides that face the industrial areas are cladded in this kind of bronze aluminum paneling, and that's kind of just to reflect the industrial history and feel of the area. I also wanted to point out the parking garage is a kind of permeable grid mesh, which I think could be very great for my project as well. just allowing in ventilation and airflow throughout that parking garage. So key ideas that I took away from this precedent were height to deal with site interaction. You obviously want the great views off to the west, but you also need to deal with the bridges, noise, all that. So elevate, get above it. But then you don't need that on the eastern side. So sloping down, great idea, very interesting. Concrete podium parking with steel frame above. That's what I'm going to be going with as well, and part of the reason why I chose this as my precedent. Green roof to reduce energy consumption, and then the building facade really responding to the context rather than just being something that you flop onto the outside of your building. Really resonated with me there. So sorry for going way over time, but yeah, here are my sources, and hope you enjoyed.